Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The debate or the feedback that has been generated by my sharing a video of Morgan Tsvangirai being interviewed in the States continues. What I find amazing about the response is, is how some people are trying to hide, to sweep under the carpet the political reality in Zimbabwe. The debate has been has come from my comment on whether or not Ambassador Chris Dell was right when he predicted, after meeting Morgan Tsvangirai when he was the ambassador of Zimbabwe in during 2004 to 2007. He had commented, he sent these comments to Washington. And they were exposed in the WikiLeaks. His comment was that Morgan Tsvangirai was a flawed and indecisive character who, if he should get into power, would become the dead weight of an albatross around the nation's neck. Not just him and his colleagues. The issue I raised then is, has this come true? And in my humble opinion, yes, it did. Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends have turned out to be corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless. They've been the milestone around the nation's neck, dragging us deeper and deeper into the abyss. I'm glad to say that I'm not the only one who has picked up this weakness in Zimbabwean society, this tendency to try to hide or to avoid, as Edson Robwell would say, substantive issues. In an interview he gave to somebody, he called it the Mozambique syndrome. And this was his explanation. Whenever they lost an argument, they, his fellow NOPF colleagues, would accuse you of being a CIA to avoid the substantive issues. Today, they call you a puppet to avoid responsibility. He was absolutely right. We have become a nation that desperately avoids substantive issues. In one of the comments I've received on social media regarding my comments on Morgan Tsvangirai, and this, by the way, is the video clip of that interview I was talking about. One of the comments I've received in the social media is that I should leave the late Morgan Tsvangirai to rest in peace. Well, this again is, of course, avoiding the substantive issues. Because if the substantive issue is that Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends have become the milestone around the nation's neck, the substantive issue then is we need to deal with this problem. They failed to implement even one token reform, and they've been participating in flawed elections, conned the people to participate, only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, and thus continue the dictatorship and the nation's suffering. That is the substantive issue. We need to deal with it because we are still suffering the ill effects of that. And the argument that we should not talk of those issues, their failures, for the sake of Morgan Tsvangirai's peace, is, to say the least, idiotic. So we are now seeking the peace of the dead at the expense of the continued suffering of the living and posterity. If the argument is that he did not fail the nation, then yes, Ambassador Chris Dell was wrong, and I am wrong to say that Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends sold out. Why should his soul be bothered by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about? But if what I said is correct, and he did indeed sell out the nation by failing to implement the reforms, even when they had the golden opportunity to do so, then I do not see why anyone should argue that we should silence the debate on a substantive issue that is affecting people's lives even today, just to save the late Morgan Tsvangirai and his colleagues the blushes that they sold out. If they sold out, they sold out. We should say it and make no apologies for it. I really subscribe to what Edson Jobo was saying here. We should stop this mentality, or as Edson Jobo would call it, the Mozambique syndrome, of hiding our heads in the sand and refusing to address the substantive issues the nation faces. Because I think it is one of the reasons why we are a failed state. The substantive issues will not disappear because we pretend they do not exist or pretend they will go away. they will remain, and the situation will only get worse. I've said on this platform, and I'll say it again, the number one reason why Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends were elected by the people of Zimbabwe was that they would implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop ZANU-PF breaking the elections. MDC was launched in 1999, and so it's now 25 years down the line. And ZANU-PF is still able to blatantly rig the elections and get away with it. We still have the problem of the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The existence of the opposition MDC-CCC has changed nothing. This is an issue we must address and we must deal with the agency the matter demands. And at the heart of it is the fact that MDC leaders failed to implement the democratic reforms even when they had the opportunity to do so. To say we should not say it for the sake of the late MDC leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, so that his soul can rest in peace, is the most idiotic argument that I've ever heard. And it should be dismissed with the total, utter contempt it deserves. We cannot afford this foolishness where we allow leaders to sell out and we fail to hold them to account for whatever reasons. Dead or alive, we must hold them to account. I say dead or alive because the same people who are saying, oh, let Morgan Tsvangirai's soul rest in peace, are the same ones we have been saying we should not say that Nelson Chamisa lied during the 2023 elections. Of course, Chamisa lied. He said he was going to plug all the vote rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. He did not. ZANU-PF went on to blatantly rig those elections. And because millions of Zimbabweans had been conned to participate, the regime ended up with legitimacy. I say it here, I've said it before, and I will repeat it. Chamisa is a liar. He lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes. It wasn't the first time he said it. He made the same lie in 2018. He is a liar. And if we do not allow, if we allow him to carry on with this, he is going to con millions of Zimbabweans to participate in 2028. And thus gives ZANU-PF legitimacy. The number one substantive issue that we should be concerned about in Zimbabwe today is stopping this madness of rigged elections. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.